The hotel room smelled like industrial disinfectant and broken dreams. I sat on the edge of the scratchy polyester bedspread, laptop balanced on my knees, watching my marriage implode in real time through a high-definition security feed. Next to me, Julia nursed a plastic cup of wine that probably cost $3 at the gas station down the road. There, she whispered, pointing at the screen with a manicured finger that trembled slightly. He's pulling into your driveway. I watched Neil's silver BMW slide up to my house like a predator approaching prey. My wife Marta appeared at the front door before he even killed the engine. She'd been watching for him, waiting. The realization hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest, even though I'd suspected this moment would come. How long do you think they've been planning this? Julia asked, her voice hollow. Does it matter? I zoomed in on the feed, capturing screenshots as Neil climbed out of his car. He looked around nervously, checking the neighbors' windows. Smart man. Too bad he wasn't smart enough to consider security cameras. Marta threw herself into his arms right there on my front porch, kissing him like they were teenagers instead of middle-aged adulterers destroying two families. I saved the image, adding it to the folder I'd been building for weeks. My husband thinks I'm at my sister's house, Julia said, taking another sip of gas station wine. What did you tell Marta? Business trip to Hartford. Quarterly budget meeting. I switched to the interior camera as they stumbled through my front door, hands all over each other. She actually seemed relieved when I said I'd be gone overnight. Julia and I had met 3 months ago in the most mundane way possible. We'd literally bumped into each other at a coffee shop downtown. She'd been crying into her latte, and I'd been nursing my own suspicions about my wife's sudden late nights at the office. One conversation led to another, and we discovered our spouses were having an affair with each other. The beautiful irony wasn't lost on either of us. I can't watch this, Julia said as Marta led Neil toward my living room couch. But I can't look away either. That's the point, I said, adjusting the camera angle with the app on my phone. We need to see everything, document everything. Because when this is over, they're going to try to gaslight us. They'll say it wasn't that serious, it didn't mean anything, it was just a mistake. On screen, my wife of 22 years was unbuttoning another man's shirt in the house I'd been paying for since she was pregnant with our first child. Neil had his hands in her hair, whispering something that made her laugh. The sound came through the speakers crystal clear. The audio quality is impressive, Julia said dryly. What kind of system did you install? Top of the line. I told Marta it was for security after the Hendersons got broken into last month. I switched to the bedroom camera as they headed upstairs. She thought it was sweet that I was worried about her safety. Julia snorted. Meanwhile, she's bringing the danger right through the front door. I'd been suspicious for months. Marta had always been ambitious, driven, focused on climbing the corporate ladder at Morrison & Associates, the advertising agency where she'd worked for the past 8 years. But lately, she'd been different, distant. She'd started working later, going in on weekends, taking mysterious phone calls that she'd end abruptly when I walked into the room. The final straw came when I'd surprised her at the office with lunch and found her desk empty at 2 in the afternoon. Her assistant had looked confused when I'd asked where Marta was, claiming she'd left for a client meeting that morning and hadn't returned. That night, I'd installed the cameras. There, Julia said, pointing at the laptop screen. He's taking off his wedding ring. Sure enough, Neil was sliding the gold band off his finger and setting it on my nightstand. The audacity was breathtaking. Does he do that every time? I asked. I assume so. I found it in his gym bag last month, along with a receipt for a hotel room. When I confronted him, he said he'd taken it off to lift weights and forgot to put it back on. Julia's laugh was bitter. I actually believed him. We're a trusting pair, aren't we? Were. Past tense. I pulled out my phone and called the number I'd programmed in earlier. Morrison Moving Company, this is David Patterson. I need a crew at 47 Maple Street tomorrow morning. 6 a.m. sharp. I need everything removed except the items on the list I emailed you. Julia raised an eyebrow. Tomorrow morning? No point in waiting. They want to play house in my bed? They can do it somewhere else. I ended the call and immediately dialed another number. Miss West? It's David Patterson. Yes, we're moving forward with the divorce proceedings. I'll have the evidence package to you by morning. On the laptop screen, my wife was doing things with her lover that she hadn't done with me in years. I closed the lid with a sharp snap. Ready for phase 2? I asked Julia. She drained her plastic cup and stood up. Let's burn their world down. The drive back to Millbrook took 2 hours through winding country roads that I'd traveled thousands of times during my marriage. Julia followed in her Honda Civic, keeping a careful distance as we'd planned. By the time we reached the outskirts of town, it was nearly midnight. My house sat dark and quiet on Maple Street, looking like the picture of suburban tranquility. Neil's BMW was gone, probably parked safely in his own driveway, while he spun lies to Julia about working late. The thought made my jaw clench. I parked in my usual spot and waited for Julia to pull up behind me. She looked pale in the streetlight, but determined. "You sure about this?" I asked as we met on the sidewalk. "They made their choice," she said. "Now they live with the consequences." I unlocked my front door, and we stepped into the house where I'd raised my children and built my life. The living room showed signs of their afternoon activities. Couch cushions askew, Marta's wine glass still sitting on the coffee table next to a beer bottle I didn't recognize. "Make yourself comfortable," I told Julia, gesturing toward the kitchen table. "This might take a while." I set up my laptop and connected it to the big screen TV mounted on the wall. Julia watched in fascination as I navigated through the security system's archived footage. "How much did you record?" she asked. "Everything. Every visit, every phone call she took in the house, every lie she told me while he was texting her." I pulled up a folder labeled Evidence that contained dozens of video files. "I've got 6 months of material here." I selected a particularly damning clip from 3 weeks ago and hit play. Marta's voice filled the room, crystal clear through the hidden microphones. "David's working late again tonight," she was saying into her phone, pacing around our bedroom in her underwear. "He's so focused on that budget analysis, he won't even notice if I'm gone." Neil's voice came through the speaker, tinny but audible. "My place or the hotel?" "Hotel. Julia's been suspicious lately, and I don't want to risk her showing up." Julia sucked in a sharp breath. She knew. She knew I suspected something. "It gets better," I said grimly, fast-forwarding to another clip. This one showed Marta and Neil in my kitchen, going through my mail while I was at work. "He's so trusting," Marta was saying, laughing as she opened a credit card statement. "He actually thinks I'm working all those late nights." "What about the kids?" Neil asked, helping himself to a beer from my refrigerator. "Ross and Amelia. They're so wrapped up in college, they barely call home anymore. David's the only one I have to worry about, and he's completely clueless." The words hit me like physical blows. 22 years of marriage, 2 children, a mortgage, joint bank accounts, shared dreams, and she thought I was clueless. "I want to watch her face when she sees this," Julia said quietly. "You will. She'll be down in about an hour." I connected my phone to the sound system and cranked the volume up to maximum. Then I selected the video from earlier that evening, the one showing Marta greeting Neil at the front door, kissing him, leading him upstairs to our bedroom. The sound of my wife's laughter echoed through the house at deafening volume. Footsteps thundered down the stairs within seconds. Marta appeared in the kitchen doorway, wearing my old college t-shirt and a pair of pajama pants, her hair messy from sleep. "David, what are you?" She stopped dead when she saw the TV screen, her face cycling through confusion, recognition, and pure terror in the space of 3 seconds. "Hello, sweetheart," I said calmly. "Come watch a movie with us." "Who is?" Marta's eyes landed on Julia, and the color drained from her face. "Oh, God." "Sit down," Julia said, her voice deadly quiet. "We need to talk." Marta remained frozen in the doorway, staring at the screen where she was currently unbuttoning Neil's shirt. "David, I can explain." "Explain what? That you've been screwing my wife's husband in our bed for the past 6 months?" I switched to another video, this one showing them in the living room. "Or maybe you want to explain how you've been laughing about what a clueless husband I am." I never said that." I pulled up the kitchen video and let her own words condemn her. "He's so trusting. He actually thinks I'm working all those late nights." Marta sank into a chair, her face buried in her hands. "How long have you known?" "Long enough to document everything. Long enough to make copies. Long enough to send a highlights reel to your mother, your sister, and your boss." Her head snapped up. "You didn't." I held up my phone, showing her the sent messages. 30 minutes ago, Julia sent the same package to Neil's family and colleagues. My job is probably gone by morning. Turns out Morrison and Associates has a strict policy about employees conducting personal relationships on company time, especially when those relationships involve using company resources to cheat on your spouse. Julia leaned forward. "Where is he, Marta? Where's my husband?" "I don't know. He left around 10. He said he was going home." To lie to me some more. Julia, please, you have to understand. I understand perfectly. You've been screwing my husband while I've been home taking care of his children and managing his household. You've been laughing about how stupid and trusting we are while you destroy our families for your own entertainment. A car door slammed outside, followed by heavy footsteps on the front porch. Someone started pounding on the door. That'll be Neil, I said, standing up. Julia, you might want to get your camera ready. Neil's fist hammered against my front door like he was trying to break it down. Through the window, I could see his face twisted with rage and panic. Open up, David. I know Julia's in there. I unlocked the door and pulled it open just as he was winding up for another assault on the wood. The momentum carried his fist forward, and I stepped aside, letting him stumble into my foyer. Well, looking for your wife? I asked pleasantly. She's in the kitchen watching home movies. Neil straightened up, his face flushed and his hair disheveled. He was still wearing the same clothes from the security footage, wrinkled now and smelling like guilt. This is insane, he said, pushing past me toward the kitchen. Julia, what the hell are you doing here? Learning the truth about my marriage, Julia replied, without looking at him. She was focused on her phone, recording everything. Neil's eyes went to the TV screen, where a loop of his greatest hits was playing in high definition. You recorded us? That's illegal. Actually, it's not, I said, following him into the kitchen. Security cameras in my own home, recording people who entered with permission. Perfectly legal. I checked with my lawyer. Your lawyer? Marta looked up from the table where she'd been sitting in stunned silence. Miss West at Patterson, Crenshaw and Associates. She's been very helpful in preparing the divorce paperwork. Turns out adultery still matters in Connecticut, especially when it's this well documented. Neil spun around to face me, his hands clenched into fists. You son of a bitch. You planned this whole thing. I planned to protect myself when my marriage inevitably exploded. You two just happened to light the fuse. I crossed my arms and leaned against the counter. Tell me, Neil, how does it feel to know your wife has been comparing notes with the husband you've been betraying? Julia, we need to talk, Neil said, taking a step toward his wife. Alone. We're done talking, Julia said, still recording. We're done with everything. I filed for divorce this afternoon. You what? Emergency filing. Adultery, abandonment, emotional cruelty. I've got everything I need right here. She gestured toward the TV screen. Plus financial records, showing you've been spending our money on hotel rooms and gifts for your girlfriend. Neil's face went white. You went through my accounts? Joint accounts, Neil. I had every right. Julia finally looked up from her phone. Did you really think I wouldn't notice $500 charges at the Marriott downtown? Or the jewelry store receipts for items I never received? I pulled up another video on the laptop, this one showing Marta wearing a necklace I'd never seen before. Nice pendant, sweetheart. Anniversary gift from your boyfriend? Marta's hand went to her throat instinctively. David, please, please what? Please pretend this never happened? Please forgive and forget while you continue screwing around behind my back? I switched to a video from last week, showing them making plans for another rendezvous. You called me from his car, Marta. You told me you were working late while you were literally sitting next to him, planning your next betrayal. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she whispered. How was it supposed to happen? Were you planning to divorce me eventually? Or just keep me around as the clueless husband who pays the bills while you have your fun? Neil stepped forward, his face twisted with anger. You want to know the truth, David? She was planning to leave you. We both were going to leave our marriages. When? Julia asked sharply. After the holidays. We were going to tell you both after Christmas. How thoughtful, I said. Let us have one last family Christmas before you destroyed everything. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. I pulled up my phone and showed him the screen. See this? It's a text message I sent 20 minutes ago to Morrison & Associates HR department. Turns out they have a very strict policy about workplace relationships, especially ones that involve married employees cheating on their spouses. Marta gasped. You sent them the videos? Just the highlights. The ones showing you two using company phones to coordinate your affair, discussing personal business on company time, and oh, my personal favorite, the one where you're both bad-mouthing your respective spouses to your coworkers. Conference room B, last Tuesday, 3 p.m. Hidden microphone in your purse picked up everything. I switched to an audio file and let their voices fill the room. Neil's voice came through clearly. David's such a boring accountant type. No imagination, no passion. I don't know how Marta stood it for so long. Marta's laugh followed. Julia's not much better. She's turned into such a suburban housewife. All she talks about are the kids and her book club. Julia flinched as if she'd been slapped. Suburban housewife, that's what you think of me. Julia, that's not. I gave up my career to raise your children, Neil. I supported your promotions, your business trips, your dreams, and you repay me by mocking me to your mistress. She's not my mistress. What is she then? I asked. Your girlfriend? Your lover? Your soulmate? I laughed bitterly. Whatever you want to call her, she's about to be unemployed and homeless. Marta's head snapped up. Homeless? I called Morrison Moving this afternoon. They'll be here at 6 a.m. to remove all your belongings from my house. You can pick them up at their storage facility once you figure out where you're going to live. You can't do that. Actually, I can. Prenuptial agreement, remember? The one you insisted on signing because you wanted to protect your independence? Turns out it works both ways. The house is mine, bought with my inheritance from my father. You get exactly what you brought into this marriage, which, if I recall correctly, was about $3,000 and a car that died 6 months after we got married. Neil grabbed Marta's arm. Come on, you can stay at my place until we figure this out. No, she can't, Julia said calmly. I had the locks changed this afternoon, and I filed a restraining order against both of you. You come within 100 feet of my house, and you'll be arrested. You can't keep me from my own home. It's not your home anymore, it's mine. Bought with my inheritance from my grandmother, if you'll recall. You never wanted your name on the deed because you said it would complicate your taxes. I had to admire Julia's preparation. We'd spent weeks planning this moment, coordinating our legal strategies, making sure every detail was airtight. Neil's face was red with rage and humiliation. This is insane. You can't destroy our lives over a mistake. A mistake? I stepped closer to him, close enough to see the sweat beading on his forehead. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk on the way home. A mistake is double booking dinner plans. What you two did was a deliberate, calculated betrayal that went on for months. You're right, Marta said suddenly, standing up from the table. You're absolutely right, and I'm sorry. David, I'm so sorry. It was stupid and selfish, and I never meant for it to go this far. But it did go this far, and now we all have to live with the consequences. Neil's phone started buzzing. He pulled it out, and his face went pale. It's my boss. At midnight? Julia asked sweetly. How unusual. Neil answered the call, his voice shaking. Hello, Mr. Morrison. Yes, I saw the email. No, I can explain. Tomorrow morning? But, sir, the call ended abruptly. Neil stared at his phone in disbelief. Let me guess, I said. Emergency meeting tomorrow morning to discuss your future with the company? They can't fire me over this. They can fire you for violating company policy, creating a hostile work environment, and bringing negative publicity to the firm, all of which you've done. Marta's phone started ringing. She looked at the screen and her face crumpled. It's my mother. Better answer it, Julia suggested. She's probably wondering why she received a video of her daughter committing adultery. You sent it to my mother? I sent it to everyone who matters to you. Your family, your friends, your colleagues. Just like you sent your betrayal into my life without asking my permission. Marta answered the phone with trembling fingers. Hi, Mom. Yes, I got your message. No, I can explain. The conversation was brief and devastating. When it ended, Marta was crying. She hung up on me, she whispered. That's unfortunate, I said without sympathy. Maybe you should have thought about how your actions would affect the people who love you before you decided to destroy your marriage. Neil grabbed Marta's hand. Come on, we'll figure this out. We'll find a hotel for tonight and make a plan tomorrow. With what money? Julia asked. I froze all our joint accounts this afternoon. And David, didn't you say something about Marta's credit cards? Cancelled. All of them. The ones that were in my name, anyway. I shrugged at Marta's shocked expression. You want independence? Here it is. This is cruel, Neil said. This is justice, Julia corrected. You two had 6 months to consider the consequences of your actions. You chose to continue anyway. Now you get to experience those consequences firsthand. A car door slammed outside, followed by another. Through the window, I could see my neighbors starting to gather on their porches. Word was spreading quickly through our small community. You might want to leave, I suggested, unless you want to explain your situation to the whole neighborhood. Neil pulled Marta toward the door, but she resisted. David, please, we can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can't do anything, Marta. There is no we anymore. There's just you and the mess you made. What about Ross and Amelia? What am I supposed to tell our children? Tell them the truth. Tell them their mother chose to destroy their family for a cheap affair with a married man. Tell them why their college funds are going to be smaller now that we're paying for 2 households instead of 1. Marta's face went white. The college funds are tied to our joint assets, which are now being divided in divorce proceedings. Congratulations, you've managed to screw over your children along with everyone else. That broke her. Marta collapsed into sobs, and Neil had to physically support her as they stumbled toward the door. This isn't over, Neil said, turning back to face us. Yes, it is, Julia said firmly. It's completely over. They left through my front door and into the night, where my neighbors were waiting with cell phone cameras and questions they couldn't answer. Julia and I watched from the window as they tried to navigate through the crowd of curious onlookers. Think they'll stay together? Julia asked. Does it matter? They've lost everything that actually mattered. Good, she said. They deserve each other. The moving truck arrived at exactly 6 a.m., just as I'd promised. I watched from my kitchen window as the crew began loading Marta's belongings into the back of the vehicle. My neighbors had gathered again, coffee cups in hand, watching the spectacle unfold. Julia had stayed the night in the guest room, and she joined me at the window as the movers carried out Marta's dresser. She's not here, Julia observed. Probably hiding at a hotel somewhere, trying to figure out her next move. I sipped my coffee and watched them load her jewelry box. Or maybe she's with Neil, planning their happily ever after. Speaking of Neil, his car isn't in our driveway either. I drove by this morning. Homeless together. How romantic. My phone rang, displaying Marta's number. I let it go to voicemail, then played the message on speaker. David, please, you have to stop this. I need my clothes, my personal things. We can talk about this like adults. Call me back. Adults, Julia snorted. That's rich. The second call came from Neil. His message was less pleading and more demanding. This is harassment, David. You and Julia are destroying our lives over a personal matter that should be handled privately. If you don't stop this vindictive campaign, we'll be forced to take legal action. Legal action, I repeated, laughing. What's he going to sue us for? Exposing his adultery? Let him try. My lawyer would love the publicity. The moving crew finished loading the truck and approached my front door. I signed the paperwork and handed the foreman a generous tip. Storage facility on Industrial Drive, he confirmed. They can pick up their stuff anytime after noon. Oh, perfect. Thank you. As the truck pulled away, Mrs. Clemens from next door approached my front porch. She was 80 years old and had lived on Maple Street longer than anyone else. David, honey, is everything all right? There was quite a commotion here last night. Everything's fine, Mrs. Clemens. Marta and I are getting divorced. She moved out. Oh dear, I'm so sorry to hear that. She glanced toward Julia, who had joined us on the porch. And you are? Julia Morrison, Neil's wife, soon-to-be ex-wife. Mrs. Clemens' eyes widened as she made the connection. Oh my goodness. It's been quite a revelation, I said. But we're handling it. Well, if you need anything at all, you just let me know. I always thought Marta seemed restless, too ambitious for her own good. After Mrs. Clemens left, Julia and I sat on the porch swing and watched the neighborhood slowly return to normal. What now? She asked. Now we wait for the next phase to begin. Which is? They'll try to fight back. They'll claim we're being vindictive, that we've overreacted, that everyone makes mistakes. They'll try to make us look like the villains. And then we remind everyone exactly who the real villains are. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. The message was short and bitter. You've destroyed everything. I hope you're happy. I showed it to Julia. Marta's using a burner phone now, probably because her regular phone has been disconnected. I canceled our family plan this morning. Thorough. I learned from the best. Around noon, my son Ross called from college. I'd been dreading this conversation, but it was inevitable. Dad, what's going on? Mom called me crying, saying something about a divorce and that she's been kicked out of the house. It's true, son. Your mother and I are getting divorced. But why? What happened? She wouldn't tell me anything specific. I took a deep breath. Your mother has been having an affair for the past 6 months. I found out, and now we're ending the marriage. Silence on the other end of the line. Then, an affair? Mom? I'm sorry you had to find out this way. I know it's a shock. Who is she having an affair with? A married man from her office. His wife and I discovered it together. More silence. Then Ross's voice, smaller now. How long have you known? A few months. I wanted to be sure before I did anything permanent. Is that why you've seemed so distant lately when we talked? Probably. I'm sorry, Ross. I didn't want this to affect you and Amelia, but there was no way to avoid it. Does Amelia know? Not yet. I was hoping you could help me figure out how to tell her. God, Dad. I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything. This isn't your fault, and it's not your responsibility to fix it. Where is Mom staying? I don't know. She'll have to figure that out herself. This is so messed up. Yes, it is, but we'll get through it. After I hung up, Julia put her hand on my shoulder. That was hard. The hardest part is knowing that my kids are going to suffer because of their mother's choices. Kids are resilient. They'll understand eventually. I hope so. My phone rang again. This time it was my lawyer, Miss West. David, I've got good news and interesting news. Which do you want first? Good news. The divorce papers have been filed and served. Marta's been officially notified. And the interesting news? She's hired Jonathan Reeves to represent her. I whistled low. Reeves was one of the most expensive divorce lawyers in the state. How is she paying for him? That's what I'm wondering. His retainer alone is $50,000. Maybe Neil is paying for it. Maybe. Or maybe they've got resources we don't know about. What does that mean for us? It means they're going to fight. Reeves doesn't take cases he doesn't think he can win. Let them fight. We've got the evidence. Evidence can be challenged, David. Reeves is very good at creating reasonable doubt, even when the facts seem clear-cut. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we be prepared for a long, expensive battle. And I'm suggesting you document everything that happens from this point forward. If they're planning a counterattack, we need to be ready. After the call ended, I shared the conversation with Julia. $50,000, she mused. Where would they get that kind of money? Good question. Neither of them has been working for the past 12 hours. Unless they've been planning this longer than we thought. What do you mean? What if they've been preparing for this possibility? What if they've been moving money around, hiding assets, getting ready for the fallout? The thought hadn't occurred to me, but it made sense. If they'd been planning to leave their marriages anyway, they might have been preparing financially as well. We need to check our bank accounts, I said, pulling out my phone. Already did. Neil cleaned out our savings account yesterday morning. $37,000. Son of a bitch. I logged into my banking app and felt my stomach drop. Marta took $25,000 from our emergency fund. So they've got money for lawyers and living expenses. And they coordinated it. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. They've been planning to destroy our marriages for weeks, maybe months. The betrayal felt even deeper now, knowing they'd been systematically preparing to abandon us while pretending everything was normal. This changes things, I said. How? If they want to play hardball, we'll play hardball. But we're going to play it better than they do. What did you have in mind? I smiled grimly. Phase 3. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. I was drinking coffee on my front porch when a black Mercedes pulled into my driveway. Jonathan Reeves himself stepped out, impeccably dressed in a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Mr. Patterson, he said, approaching the porch with a confident stride. I'm Jonathan Reeves, representing your wife in the divorce proceedings. I know who you are, I replied, not bothering to stand. What do you want? I'd like to discuss a reasonable settlement that would benefit everyone involved. I'm listening. Reeves climbed the porch steps and stood at the railing, looking down at me with practiced authority. My client is willing to forego any claim to spousal support if you agree to an equitable division of assets and refrain from further harassment. Harassment? The public humiliation, the involvement of family members and employers, the deliberate destruction of her reputation. It ends now, or we'll be forced to seek legal remedies. I laughed. Legal remedies for exposing adultery? Good luck with that. Connecticut law recognizes emotional distress claims, Mr. Patterson. What you've done goes far beyond reasonable response to marital infidelity. What I've done is document my wife's betrayal and inform the relevant parties. Everything I've shared has been factual and verifiable. The manner of sharing matters. Sending intimate videos to family members, employers, and neighbors constitutes intentional infliction of emotional distress. Those weren't intimate videos. They were security footage showing trespassing and adultery in my own home. Reeves pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot. This is a text message you sent to Mrs. Patterson's mother at midnight 2 days ago. It contains explicit video content and deliberately inflammatory language. I looked at the screenshot. The message read, "Thought you should know what your daughter has been doing in my house while I'm at work. Video attached. Factual information," I said. Her mother had a right to know. At midnight. With no warning or context? A reasonable person would consider that deliberately cruel. A reasonable person might also consider adultery deliberately cruel. Reeves put his phone away and leaned against the railing. "Mr. Patterson, I understand you're angry. You have every right to be angry. But what you're doing now is going to hurt you more than it hurts your wife. How do you figure? Judges don't like vindictive behavior, even when it's justified. If this case goes to trial, you'll be portrayed as an obsessive, controlling husband who couldn't accept